Who would be a Wolves fan, eh?
On goes ball. People might yet win it here for Wolves. Flash in the shot. What a goal!
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Wolves Fancast, part of the 90min Football Network. Joining me this evening, I've got the ever reliable Jafo.
Good evening.
And the ever
You
Stu.
know what? Him getting ever reliable, you couldn't really sum him up more enthusiastically, could you? But that's, you know what, when you wait for tomorrow or later on today, depending on if you're hearing this on Monday, and go and listen to Jafo's Cage Fighting debut, where we talk about online multiplayer games for a whole hour, and he's supreme professional on there.
I think it's just I offset against your insanity for that whole hour. It was good though. It was good fun. I can't deny it. Yeah, if you get a chance, make sure if you are listening to this on like Spotify or something, make sure you listen to this first, then go listen to the Cage Fighting Man.
Yeah, just drop in any time for it. I was gonna say it's like the earliest plug we've ever had for Cage Fighters.
Yeah, well, that I've been on anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say I'd need to double check and work out if we've had a quicker one from that stat wise. Before we talk about the game on Saturday, a couple of bits and pieces to cover. Again, another plug for our charity football match happening at the start of June. It's going to be a Fancast 11 versus Upload United. So essentially a team of other football podcasts and content creators, all to raise money for Mind Charity. I'll put the link in the description for anyone who's keen to donate. But if you go to our Twitter page and our social media pages, you'll be able to find it there as well. So make sure you go check that out. The other thing I wanted to sort of chat about, and I won't. I'm pretty sure both of you saw it, but this week Wolves have been doing their one pack week, which is basically based around their inclusivity around the football club. And they shared a genuinely heartwarming video on, I think it was Friday or Saturday. Was it? Yeah, Friday, of the young lad Fraser. And, you know, really powerful, emotional story. I mean, I won't kind of go into the nuts and bolts of it because you should just check it out yourselves. But what a fantastic little dude that guy is. Like, genuinely, I feel as a 30-year-old man, I shouldn't necessarily be inspired by a small child, but just so infectious, so fantastic. And to see what the club tried to do around him, and in particular the players as well, and how they interacted with him. A lot of people might have seen the clip of the Arsenal players not really engaging with mascots earlier this week, and to see, you know, all the Wolves players in that clip, don't get me wrong, it's edited and whatever, but to see them like genuinely show like a level of human compassion. You know, don't get me wrong, we can be crap on the pitch a lot of the time, but when you're doing stuff like that, it does make life a bit easier. So genuinely, like it made me feel better about the result yesterday when I rewatched it back earlier today. Something that Stu picked up on though, and I thought
it wasn't just me.
It wasn't just Stu. It wasn't just Stu, but you did tweet it, and it got a lot of traction. I thought it'd be an interesting topic to discuss. So they've got Fraser there. Pre-match, he was a mascot for the Brentford game, and he gets introduced to Wolfie and Wendy. Now, in the clip, one of the, I assume, like mascot liaison person, I didn't quite catch who it was, uttered the line, "So this is Wendy's brother," referring to Wolfie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for those of a certain age, Stu, as you put it, worrying information coming out of that lovely video yesterday. Wolfie and Wendy are siblings, yet they got married and had a child in the 90s. Now, I feel out of all the fantastic work they did last week, and it wasn't just around Fraser, they did stuff around Ramadan Eid, so many fantastic things. When are they going to release canon?
I mean,
we need scripture. We need it nailed down, and we need it now. And I don't think it can wait to get Jeff Shee's opinion on Ask Wolves.
I mean, is incest allowed in the animal kingdom? I'm guessing that it is, and it's a usual kind of thing. But animals don't get married, do they? This is the key point, and they're not over 7 foot tall. So this is like when Kevin Webster. There was something with Kevin Webster on Coronation Street years ago about this as well, when they forgot that he had a kid because they hadn't read the canon. This is obvious that this is the canon of Wolfie and Wendy and the baby, which is, I can't remember its name, couldn't find any information about it when I furiously looked about this for a good 2 hours after I'd seen the video. It's worrying. It's worrying times, and we're exposing ourselves up to Albion ridicule here, and they might have lost it to Sunderland today, and amazingly their brilliant protests were shelved because they're doing so well and going for a playoff push, which kind of defeats the object really. But still, it was brought to my attention that I was informing them of this mockery and this dingle-like behaviour. And it's just truly shocking. It needs stamping out, and we need answers. We need them now. I mean, they could have discovered that they were related later on. This has happened before, where people have got married to their system, and they could be separated at birth. You know, these things happen with dogs and cubs all the time. So it could be something that similar, that simple. Nice explanation for it, but we just need to know.
I don't even mind if. Right, we've had some funny old spells at Wolves over the years, and particularly over the last, what I think is about 30 years, judging by the photos. Would you say, Stu? Looking at the kits, that's mid-90s, isn't it? So we're talking pushing 30 years.
Put it back up again. You can tell which that's got the Pumas down the sleeve when they got married. Yeah. So that's 98, 99. So you're talking late 90s at that point.
Yeah. So we are there or thereabouts, aren't we? I mean, could we have, when we hired Dean Saunders, gone into some sort of multiversal shift? And then that might be our way of, actually sort of saying, we're not, basically we're on the darkest timeline of where they've become brother and sister. I mean, and the son, I don't know, went with Thanos' snap, couldn't be with, I don't know. We just need answers.
And I have got the book of
Fancast,
mascots.
By the way,
the book of mascots is over there, and none of them in the entire country have ever married their own sister, had a fight, and had a facelift, and all be canon. Only Wolves.
We probably need to bring in Steve Bird on this, but I say this seems like a shift. It could have just been a mistake. It could have just been a slip of a tongue. Didn't want to necessarily go into the whole, are they married? Are they not? I get it's complicated. I have explained to my toddler about, people who are together but not married. And, I get it. But there's a ceremony, is what I think your Stu's getting at. There were flowers.
I was there. 20 odd thousand were there as well, who all experienced it.
So, if you got theories, guys, let us know. This is my direct call out to the club to make it known, make it stated. It just needs answers for me, and it's not quite good enough. It's plagued too much of mine and Stu's weekend, to be honest, and that's as of course me and Stu are two very serious people, as you can see by what Stu is wearing if you are watching live on YouTube, of course. Unfortunately, though, that's all the parts I had to delay talking about the game. So we are going to talk about it now, guys, because sort of have to. I know. I guess the biggest thing going into it was the Neves, should he start? Should he stay on the bench? And well, he stayed on the bench. We were unchanged from the Brentford win, which I was going to say whether it was the right call or not. I think more interesting for me was actually the Leicester lineup was basically going for 4 strikers in a bit of a do or die situation for old Dino Smith.
Yeah, and it was just utterly bizarre. I mean, I was happy with the lineup. I mean, I made my case very well known over the last week and a half or so about this system works best, and saw ours, and it was kind of like a murmuring of appreciation of, yeah, okay, it's the right thing to do. You don't change a winning team, blah, blah, blah. And then that Leicester team come out, and like everyone was furiously getting their notepad out on their phones and like, trying to figure out who was going to play where. And it was just, you had players massively playing out of position. It was like the mad days of Bruno Lage when we had like back 2 at one point, trying to save a point. But this was from the very start. But we just tore them to shreds, and it kind of wasn't a surprise, really, when you looked at that team.
Yeah, it was fascinating that it's going to be easy to forget that for a large portion of that first half, we were really good. We played like a team who'd won 2 on the bounce. They played like the worst team in Europe on form. And we got a goal. And you know what? It's almost like let's try to work out the best way of describing this, is how you want Wolves to play. That on the front foot, pressing high up the pitch, being really sharp, incisive, and doing shit quickly.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, all you have to do is to look at the transition in the goal and who's involved. You got midfielders, you got forwards working together. It's seamless. You can kind of see what Julen's trying to do now. So it's all about time now, about putting that into the players and giving them the time to get the understanding of doing this consistently. Because that's the only key problem that we have now with this team is just consistency. And
Yeah.
the thing is, like you said, the goal is good because that is the plus point, and it's the fact that a forward scored it is a bonus, to be honest. But it's the nature of the goal, and it's the nature of they won the ball back, and they did these quick transitions and was able to create a space to create a chance, which is something that we've not seen for a long time. But this sort of talking about the team sheet, this consistency of having the same 10 players or 11 players every week allows the team to understand each other and to get the confidence in each other to be able to do things like that and to build and learn new things and to actually buy into the philosophy that the club wants to do.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the consistency in the lineup. I mean, don't get me wrong, it all kind of fell apart second half yesterday. But that you are right. I think having that consistent lineup when you're in decent form and still try and get this team shout, it has been showing. And I think, in particular, that Lamina Gomez pivot or duo, because you don't really see Lamina go that far up the pitch usually. He doesn't tend to, really be. He's not the one who you necessarily see pressing that high up, but because he's kind of got Gomez next to him or whatever, he's got trust in the players around him, and frankly, that Leicester lineup, that we've got enough bodies to not feel that he's going to kind of completely expose his back line.
It was the old way of one goes, one stays, and it's so simple, yet we don't see it, do we? And it was like that old going back to the 90s again, that Liverpool pass and move, the Liverpool Groove song. There was actual passing and movement from a Wolves team for at least 40 minutes. And it was stuff that we haven't seen for a long, long time. Even under Nuno, we didn't play that way. We played, what was it, slave to the system, I think Gully called it a few weeks ago or something like that, where everyone knew their place, no deviating from it, do as you're told, behave. There was freedom there, and that's been building over the last few weeks, and was why my Neves thing was, well, we'll get onto the second half in a bit, but it was so refreshing to watch in the first half that we looked like a top 10 team again. And it was, they had no answer to it. And they had their their special area with the all dressed as referees again, like the Arsenal units. And I'm not calling them ultras; they're pathetic human beings. But there was one of them banging the big guy with the drum who's been there for years. Fair play to him, still alive. He was there banging the drum through the whole game, didn't stop, even when they were terrible. But after about 15 minutes into the game, they were silenced because they had no answer to it. So you had that one guy banging his little drum because they were completely battered into submission. And it should have the frustrating thing about it that it should have been 3 or 4. And I know that Match of the Day made it look like we didn't have any more shots at all, and blocks don't count apparently. And when the stat bar come up later on, and it's like, oh yeah, we had just a couple of shots in between the two clubs, but they were blocked, and there was so many times where there were through balls, they were either over hit or under hit from a great position. You think, oh, just next time, and you look at that 15 shots from Leicester, 16 from us. If you watch their Match of the Day highlights, you wouldn't have seen that. And even to be fair, the club highlights didn't show it either because a lot of them were blocked on approach, or they were wayward. But we were actually having shots on goal. Yeah, 3 on target. I know, but it's a start. We've been used to not having shots at all for so long. And yeah, I know Dan's favourite player, Sarabia, was kind of iffy a bit, and he was more at fault for a lot of it, and he's still finding his feet. I think there's something there with him. I just don't really know what it is, and I think he's gonna be a deputy for Cunha. I think he's probably his best position in the middle, if he can bulk up a little bit, because he's a bit too flimsy out wide, which kind of defeats the object a little bit, I suppose. But
I do think he gets a little bit lost in a way, and I don't think he's a player who necessarily has a big influence on a game. I feel like the game kind of influences him. Does that make sense? Whereas Cunha, he dictates if Wolves play good or bad. And in the first half, his involvement, we were good. Second half, when we changed things around and he was isolated and things like that, obviously he's not that fulcrum in the same way, and it kind of shows. But he's having much more of an impact on the game through what he does than someone like Sarabia, who, from what I've seen of him anyway, in the best spells that he's had as a player, it tends to be, as I say, sort of not quite a poacher, but similar to those goals he scored, that goal he scored against Fulham, where he's kind of just being a sharp, quite instinctual player, rather than being someone who's doing a lot of the intricate play and linking it all forward. So I can see why people like Dan and quite a few of us don't buy into him, but I can also see why people do, because he's clearly got a level of technical quality about him. Yeah, I think he's someone who, I think it might have been Dan again. Might as well just have him on. I've referred to him 3 times in a row now. But, we signed him for, what was it, 3.5 million? And there is a level of what you get what you pay for. And it's not, it's, if he sods off in the summer because we've gone for an upgrade or Payne proves his fitness or whatever, he'll be very much forgotten about and it won't be a big deal. And I don't know. I was still waiting for him to have that spark, but also we're not playing through him. We're not trying to necessarily create all the chances in the same way, but kind of sets him up at the back post in the same way that, as Jafoe's mentioned, we're trying to try something different and always try and get more central players scoring more instead of it hopefully coming to a wide man, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's just tough for him, and I think Stu's probably got it bang on, to be honest, that he should just be somebody who is a second choice to Cunha. Because if you look at where he's done well in Portugal, he's done well in Liga. These are, and the teams that he's played for, they're ones who've had 80% possession. So he can kind of go missing for most of the game because he doesn't need to do anything, or just a couple of little touches here and there and little short passes, and then he can come alive when they're at the edge of the box and they just need a shot or something like that, because that's where he does well. when he's playing at a team like us, where invariably it's like a 50-50 balance, or maybe we have a little bit more possession, he's got to do a lot more. So his faults show a lot more. And I think the fact that he is, like Stu says, he's not like physically built to play in the Premier League. And there's a lot of very, very good, like smaller players who are very, very good footballers, but wouldn't do well here. If you think like Papu Gomez, who was at Atalanta, he's a very, very good footballer. But if you brought him into the Premier League, he'd be bullied. So it's playing for horses for courses. So I think if he bulks up a little bit, like you say, Stu, and he's there as a good option, you can bring him in against teams when Cunha needs a rest or you need to rotate late in games. Then it's a great piece of business really from the club to get somebody in who's played for very good teams. He's a good technical footballer for a limited amount of money.
I mean, we don't actually, until them two came in, we didn't have a second striker option. I know people always say, oh, play Prudence in the middle, but he's shit there. He's always been shit there. Prudence is at his best when he's on form, out wide, and not messed with. And that is his role. He can't play in the middle. He's too small. It doesn't work for him. With exactly the same way we're talking about. We didn't have any of these players before. And now we've got two of them, and we're playing one slightly in a kind of ineffective position, really. I know he's played there before, but not in the Premier League, like Jafel just said.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be a bit of a time will tell still slightly. But I say, if he goes in the summer, kind of not. I don't think it's a huge loss at the moment, but we'll see. I guess in a way it was a game of two penalties. So we'll talk about obviously the Sarr one, because I was trying to remember last time we saw a brain fart that bad. And then I thought, oh, there's a whole catalogue, because I was thinking like Jimenez last season when he got sent off. But it reminded me very much of the Richard Stearman penalty he gave away many a year ago, where the player's just running away from goal and he decides to push him. The Sarr trip.
Yeah,
he did slip into him, didn't he?
Yeah.
Because I think that's when you see it live, you're like, this is just bonkers.
Yeah, it looked like from the corner where we were, it looked like he just ran into him, and obviously everyone's having to go at him and like, oh, fucking hell, Sarr. But still, regardless of him slipping on the turf, he shouldn't be there anyway. There's no reason for him to be charging out, doing that. I mean, we said it numerous times over the last 18 months, saying with that. And I said when we signed him that for how good he can be, he's always got one ridiculous fuck up in him every few months or so. And he hasn't done it for a long time. I mean, there was people on the way out saying, oh, we need a new keeper and all this stuff. And yeah, he's not been at the level that he was last season. But in the last, month or so, he's been way better. Ever since we signed Bentley as backup, he's been great. And this is the one thing where, other than getting caught in possession a little bit, doing that kind of thing, losing his mind and doing something like this, he hasn't done for a long time. So I'm prepared to give him it's obviously his fault and he put us on the back burner, and we ultimately it knocked the stuffing out of the team as well, because we were so dominant and we hadn't put our chances away as per usual. But then where do you put the blame? Do you put the blame on the strikers for not scoring again? Or do you put the blame solely on Sarr for one silly mistake where he fell? It's a bit 50-50 for me.
Yeah, it's tough. It's obviously a complete, balls up by Sarr to come charging out, but you can't account for slipping. You can't account for this. He's just clumsy, and we all know he's a clumsy goalkeeper in certain moments, because he's done the similar thing before. He's brought people down before, and he doesn't need to do it. Jamie Vardy is he might be coming towards the end of his career, but he's still a fast footballer. He's still going to get to the ball way before him. He needs to use a bit of common sense. But it's one of those. It's a split second decision. It's easy to say after the event that he should have done this, he should have done that. I'm kind of glad he did something, because I saw on Twitter people talking about Rui Patricio. I love Rui Patricio. He's a very good goalkeeper, but I know exactly what he would have been doing, and he would have been standing on his fucking line and waiting.
Yeah.
And that's just as bad, really, because you would have allowed the shot on goal.
I mean, no one the thing with this. No one talks about. Well, a few people do talk about the amount of ridiculous mistakes that Edison and Allison make of a similar kind of caliber because they're that kind of keeper. So it's a trade-off. You either stick with Rui. I mean, Rui served us very well, but we had a different team. We were so deep anyway. It didn't matter that he didn't have to come off his line. But playing the way we do, if you got someone stuck on your line, it's a goal straight away, guaranteed. So it's horses for courses. You want to play progressive attacking football, in theory. You got to make the gamble at the back, and these kind of things are going to happen. They're going to happen more than. Did Ruby ever give a penalty away? Maybe 1, 2. I can't think of one like this off the top of my head, anyway. But it's just one of them things. Keepers like this, they're going to make mistakes like this. You just got to take it on the chin and just carry on. And I will give him credit though. He was proper bollocking himself. You could see him just chatting and talking to himself. So angry with his own performance and mistake. You've seen keepers before just shrug it off. You can see that he cares. And he was berating himself, and fair enough. You fucked up. You move on.
Yeah, I think in fact, on the image first unit, it looks clumsy as well. You say he does slip into him, like he's not. They say it's not like the Richard Stibb one, where they say like he's very much running away from God and just decides to clip him. It for me, it's like he realizes that Vardy's taking it away from goal because Jamie Vardy's quite good at that in terms of winning penalties. He does have a bit of a track record of, veering away from goal, getting the contact, rather than, I was going to say doing the noble thing and trying to get a shot on target or whatever. And it's almost like Sarr realizes what's happening too late, tries to stop himself, and then literally gets tangled up in his own feet and knocks him over. So it is frustrating, and it did set Wolves back mentally, you could argue. But I think the real shift came at half time, obviously, because literally around the same time, Lamina pulls up injured with suspected hamstring injury, and Neves comes on at half time. And I know Leicester make a change as well. We talked about Neves not starting and to essentially be introduced at half time. It did feel like there was very much a shift in the game, both for Wolves struggling second half, as Lopetegui said in his post-match stuff, but also Leicester kind of gaining that bit of confidence and bit of belief in themselves as well.
That's the hardest part is how you sort of pick yourself up after such a crazy moment in a football game, and having somebody come on like Ruben, because Ruben is a fantastic footballer, probably one of the best players, if not the best, to wear a Wolves shirt, comes on the pitch. But to have somebody who's emotionally probably not stable, as we talk about in recent times, he's not an emotionally stable captain, to come onto the pitch is not the right moment. And when you look at football games, you have to talk about key moments, and him coming in, being involved in the game, it upsets the balance. And that's the key thing that we look at, is that despite all his qualities as a footballer, when he comes into a side that has Nunes in, that has Gomez in, there's no balance, and everything feels unsettled. And it allows himself to play well, but having one player play well and then two players suffering because of it, it's not good for the team, and it's all about the greater good and all that, to be all about it. But it's all about balance, and the one thing that Ruben sadly doesn't bring to a Julen Lopetegui team is balance, and that's how we need to address it and look at it. And that's sadly the disruptive side of bringing him into a team. But
Yeah.
It was a team that was, you could see that they were shell shocked, but from that point of view, they were never going to go again. That was the problem. As soon as he came on, there were times in the first, let's say after 5 minutes of the second half, you knew exactly who was going to win that game straight away because he at times he was deeper than our centre halves. Again, like why? In a game like this against a team as bad as they are at the minute, where you've seen literally half an hour earlier where we've absolutely ripped them apart with proper football and pass and move. And movement's the problem. We've had movement problems. It sounds like some kind of laxative advert though, but we've had movement problems for years at this club because of the way that we played. And that's not saying it was a bad thing because they were set up in a certain way in the Championship and that stayed the same way until Nuno left. Mainly the same under Bruno Lage as well. And the one constant was Ruben Neves. And that's... he's never going to give you movement, is he? He's not that kind of player. He's like a magician with a wand, and he'll spray long balls out. He'll pass, but he'll never pass, move, and then carry on running because that's rarely his game. He has done it, which is so frustrating, but because we know he can do it at times, and when he was played further forward a few weeks ago, he can press, and he was sometimes the furthest forward pressing as well. So we know he can do it, but his natural game doesn't seem to be anything other than getting the ball and distributing it sideways. I mean, it's a bit harsh me calling him a Portuguese crab on Twitter, I know, but in the moment, but he, like Jafel said, he influences so many other players the way he is. And like I said earlier about one stays, one goes. When Ruben's on the pitch, he stays. No one else stays. So it's left to João Gomez to run around. Nunes was completely isolated anyway for the vast majority of the game, and he was pretty piss poor to be honest. But so was Sarabia on the other side in the second half. They had nothing to do, and then when you're taking Costa off as well, you got no focal point, and then Cunha's just screwed. Like you said earlier, Rich, he was completely isolated as well, and it all comes back to the same thing where Leicester kind of wised up a little bit, but still, someone like Adama coming on to run at them and open them up would have been an ideal substitution, and that's me saying it. That's me calling for him, and yet Neto as well in his 5-minute cameo. What was the point in that? But it just changed the whole dynamic of the game, and it was very similar to the Forest game where Forest away a few weeks ago, where if we still had that thing in the docket, I'm guessing that it's been removed now. The pass map for that way, it was just a horseshoe. It was get to the corner, come back, go to the other corner, come back. It was the same again. There was nothing through the middle at all. And you're thinking, well, you've clearly shown that you can do that in the first half because that's where the goal came from pressing through the middle. And as soon as Ruben Neves came on, it all stopped.
What I'll say is I don't... It's probably one of the few times I've actually seen Lopetegui almost get out-tacticked. Which, considering it was against Dean Smith, is somewhat shocking. But as I mentioned, like let's just start with this very attacking formation, and pretty much got pummeled for half an hour for the first half. Scored in the 37th minute, and then kind of shell shock until half time. They then bring on a central midfielder for Jamie Vardy, which kind of still keeps obviously a lot of their attacking options going forward, but does give them that extra man in the midfield. I think the biggest killer for Wolves was 34-year-old Diego Costa centre forward coming off, being replaced by 35-year-old, bottle carrying midfielder. Because I completely see what you're saying about Ruben Neves. In terms of actually, he prefers to play deeper. He prefers to be a deep lying player, which doesn't necessarily fit in the grand scheme of what needs to happen in this team, unfortunately, at the moment. However, we've experienced for several seasons now a midfield duo of Neves and Moutinho. We talk about offering the same thing. They both sit. And the warning signs are there. We've seen Cunha play up top by himself. It doesn't work. Now, I'm not saying that, let's bring on a centre forward. Hey, you bring on Jimenez for Diego Costa? Do you bring on Neto? So at least it's another attacking player who maybe you move Kuhn further forward and you have someone who plays a little more in his proximity. And yeah, it just didn't quite, none of it kind of quite added up. And it did feel like the warning signs were there for it. And again, players dropped off for the goal as well. And you look back on it, and I think Leicester have done very well in terms of how they've created that goal. But at the same time, Wolves kind of fell into the traps, which I find most frustrating. I think, a lot of people have called out Mateus Nunes for the goal because he just seemed to sort of lose track of him. But also you look at where Semedo ends up in terms of getting suckered into, way out of this defensive line. Then what the centre halves don't quite know whether they're coming and going. The right back is it's very Johnny-esque, the goal, in terms of when he's done a couple of those breaks into the box. But, should Totti have done better to get goal side and get in front of him? Should the defenders have made sure they're blocking that a bit more? So the whole goal felt a lot of yesterday just felt utterly preventable.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I said. You summed it up perfectly there. Chaos. It was utter chaos because, and again, it sounds like we're just picking on him, but him never has been the deepest player on the pitch at times, and the defenders kind of pushing out wide, and it just didn't make any sense. None of it made any sense in that second half. It was like, what are we trying to do? It was. I mean, I was. As soon as they scored the second, it was game over. We were never coming back from that, and it was boring, which is kind of the worst thing you want. I mean, you'd rather be pissed off, or obviously you'd rather be ecstatic, but you'd rather be one or the other. But it was so fucking dull again that you could just see the writing on the wall from a mile off, and there was players, like you said, being suckered in. Players were tired. I mean, Matthias was playing as a right winger. Why? Didn't make any sense. Because in the last two games, he's played like almost as narrow as you'd play in a diamond, and it worked perfectly. Yet at Leicester away of all places, he was playing as a right winger, which he's clearly not. Just odd, bizarre mistakes all over the place. God knows what happened. I just don't know what happened.
What I will say is, hand on heart, do I think we deserved anything out of the game? Not really.
Not in that second half performance.
Not from the second half. Let's be honest, that's where football matches are won and lost to a great degree. But should we have had a penalty? I mean, I'm going to go for yes. For essentially for handball incident. Now, I didn't get pulled up by VAR. Am I right in thinking?
Yeah, it did.
Did it get VAR checks?
Yeah.
Because I don't understand how that's not a penalty.
It's
it's not normal, is it?
Yeah, it's explaining stupidity again. That in a normal, sensible world, it's a penalty. But this is the Premier League, where they decided at the start of the season that things like this were not going to be a penalty. In Europe, you'd get that. And we've seen it. We saw it against Man City. It was Leipzig who got a ridiculously soft penalty for handball, which you'd never see in the Premier League given.
Bayern.
They got pummeled anyway, so it didn't matter. But still, that would never get given in the Premier League this season, for whatever reason. Who really knows? But it was the same with, like people have said about the Maguire one a couple of weeks ago. Similar thing. He rolled in. He did hit his hand. But the amount of time, the more I've watched that, where he's jumped and it's clearly, I think the flight of the ball changing so much off his arm makes me kind of think, yeah, that is more of a penalty than the Maguire one because of how he's jumped, his arm's flailing around anyway because it's a weird angle, so they'll bring that into it.
But he's nowhere near the ball. Like his head's nowhere near the ball.
Yeah, he completely misses it. He completely misses the ball with his head, and because he's kind of twisted. I mean, this is what Dermot Gallagher will say tomorrow. Because he's twisted, it's hit his arm and it's bounced down, but it hasn't bounced down. It's bounced the other way.
Yeah.
So, but that's literally what is this day and a half later, and I've seen that 20 odd times now. This is the first time tonight that I'm thinking that probably should have been given. Whereas before, when I didn't think it at the time, I thought, oh, it's just one of them things. But the angle was a bit different from the corner. And then I watched it on Twitter last night, and then on Match of the Day, and I thought, nah, you ain't getting that given. But the direction of the ball changes so dramatically that, yeah, it's yeah, I'm changing my own mind. That should have been given.
Like for me, if it kind of catches a flick on and it hits you on, fair enough. But that ball's travelled an awful long way for him to miss the ball that badly with his head, then catches on. It's handball. I'm usually fairly kind of on the fence about these, but no, I think it's a pretty bad decision for me.
It's not even a surprise, is it? So no.
Well, I was going to say you could rattle off the handball incidents we've had against Leicester. It's a catalogue at this point.
As soon as it came up on the screen, and then it's a checking penalty, handball, and then, like, people laughed.
Yeah,
people laughed because you knew what was going to happen.
Yeah,
frustrating, really frustrating. He said, but it didn't define Wolves' day for me. Like, hell, if we'd have scored that, I still don't see us winning. To be honest, or getting something out of it, because we were poor, we were. But hopefully we can turn it around, because we're playing again in 2 days' time, gents. We of course playing Crystal Palace, who we're kind of neck and neck with for a point, and they've kind of done what we wanted to do, and very much crept away from relegation zone. Now on 37 points as opposed to us on 34. Yet we are still 6 points clear from drop zone. Don't get me wrong. With 6 games to go, so we are still probably safe, almost certainly, unless there's a lot of turnaround. But Palace have seemed to have kind of got a couple of those wins recently. Well, they're beaten in 4 after sort of draw up the weekend against Everton, wins against Southampton, Leeds, and of course Leicester as well. How are you feeling going to Tuesday at the moment, Stu? Because we don't have a great record against Palace, do we?
I mean, we won when there was no fans there. That was nice. For me, there's 2 ways it's going to go. If Lamina's fit and we play the team that lined up in the first half, or a variation of that, I think you kind of know what I mean. I'm pretty confident. I think it'll be a pretty decent game. But if we start playing horseshoe football again with certain players in there and a certain lineup, we're going to get absolutely ripped apart, man. I mean, you look at how, I know they only got 0-0 at the weekend, but look how flowing they were playing the foot. It was the kind of football that we were playing in the first 20-25 minutes yesterday that Roy the boys brought back to them out of nowhere. If we start pissing about and playing some kind of like containment, boring football again, I think they just rip us apart. I've got no confidence in it whatsoever if that's the case. But on the other side of it, it's anyone's.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think it's all down to what he does, and I think the 2 key things he needs to think about are who plays up front, if Diego Costa can play, and then who replaces Lamina, because they're the 2 key areas that what we've done well with in recent games, and when we've won games, especially like the Chelsea and the Brentford game, is these have been the 2 key areas within the spine of our team. And if we have points in that squad where we haven't got a spine, Cunha playing as a lone striker, it's not going to work. It's like having a body with no head because you can't do nothing. It's there's nothing there. He's a good footballer, but he links play. You need somebody to play off. Diego Costa can give you that because of all the experience that he's got in the world. Can Raul come in and do that? I don't know. It's hard to say. We're at a point now where we're screaming for Sasha Kalajic to have some kind of Jesus-esque revival, to be brought back from the dead of an ACL injury, to come back and play, because it's exactly what we need, and that's where we see the positives.
Before the pedants come on Twitter, he can't play this season. He's not registered.
Fair enough. I'm sure we could. It's because he's been such a miracle scale of a comeback. I think the FA could probably do us a solid.
We could dress him up as Chiquinho, but that would be problematic in 2023, wouldn't it? So
yeah,
don't go there.
Yeah, no further comment on that one.
Yeah, we'll swiftly move on. It's a full fixture. I was going to say it's a full game week, as the kids say nowadays. So you've got us on Tuesday. Really interesting tie: Leeds versus Leicester. I mean, I know Leicester have just beaten us, but I'd quite like to see them win again now.
And if he drags them in,
exactly. And Leeds thought they got it all sussed out when they beat us 4-2. Oh, tide's turning. Again, Forest against Brighton should be an interesting one. And then on Thursday, in terms of ones that affect us to a degree, Southampton, Bournemouth, and Everton are playing as well. But I feel like we're now in that mini league, I think, above the relegation zone of the teams who have kind of yet to get 38 points. So basically it's from, I'd say, Palace to Bournemouth. We're kind of in a little league of our own, I think, of Palace, West Ham, Wolves and Bournemouth at the moment.
The race for 12th.
Yeah. Why haven't Sky branded it yet? There should be a big push on that, because it does sort of feel that's where those four teams are going to finish. So,
well, if Chelsea carry on being like they are, you can absolutely guarantee that it'll be Ocean's 11 or something like that. If they get dragged in as well, if they lose another couple, they're what? How many points away are they?
They are on 39 points with a game in hand on Crystal Palace.
Yeah, so.
I mean, they are
Chelsea chase. That's what I'm going for.
Just imagine it.
They are legitimately awful at the moment, Chelsea. I mean, it's glorious to see.
Well, we've gone 48 minutes without mentioning Spurs.
I mean, Spurs be Spursing.
I've never seen anything like it. I mean, my entire life of watching football, I've never seen anything as ridiculous as that first 25 minutes or whatever it was today. Just utterly baffling how shit they can be. And then to bring a defender on to shoot it up at 5-0.
I mean, my 2 points, it almost reminded me of Brazil, Germany in the 2014 World Cup, where they just legitimately forgot how to do their jobs. I think there is something in terms of Spurs that, admittedly, with their current manager, the fact he's not actually a manager, it is the Spurs equivalent of hiring Terry Conn until the end of the season, and they are feeling the effects of it. And that sounds like I'm really discrediting the guy, who's probably a world-class coach, but that club is such a shambles. And obviously it was indicative of them getting of Conte moving on, and there not being any real plan or identity. But they've just gone, let's just sack it in for the rest of the season. Again, same as Chelsea in a way, because they'd have still, at a certain point, they still had an outside chance of getting European football, even if it was Europa Conference, right? But now it just serves them better to write off this season and not have to concentrate about and not have the additional games of the Cups next season. And it sort of feels like that's going to end up, I mean, with Spurs, the Spurs thing will then, for them to be in the Europa Conference, in your conference, won't it? That'd just be peak Spurs, wouldn't it?
and get knocked out by some Armenians.
Yeah. With them playing like a full strength side as well. That's the only way I can see it. But yeah, so should be some tasty games at the weekend, if you ask me. In the week, we will be back on Wednesday, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about the Palace game and also preview the Brighton game as well. It's all coming thick and fast, isn't it? It's almost like we're barreling towards the end of the season now. And how much you boys like it? Who fancies a quiz? We've got, because it's preview show, because we're combining shows this week because of the turnaround time. I know.
I'm sorry, I'm breaking. I'm freezing. I'm breaking.
I'll be honest with you, it won't work with just one of you. Of course, on our preview shows, we do our sudden death squads. So today, the game is Palace 3, Wolves 1 from the it was actually February from 2010 in the FA Cup replay. Now, you both know how the game works. Basically, you take it in turns, indicate where a player played in the game. I'm going to be nice and allow subs if they came on, but not subs if they didn't. Okay? So also, I'm 90% sure the little formation thing that I had lots of fun making up. I don't actually know if both teams play 4-4-2. I just in case you're like, oh, is he playing mind games with me? No, just thought it's a Mick McCarthy team. Let's hedge our bets. But saying that, looking at the team, no, we didn't go 4-4-2. Stu, would you like to go first?
Danny Butterfield.
Yes.
Hat-trick hero.
I kept it pretty quiet up till now. Of course, for the untrained people in the room, the game was kind of infamous, for want of a better term, because Danny Butterfield scored a 6-minute hat trick. And I'm pretty sure, was it a perfect hat trick as well?
Yeah, he's a right back.
Yeah, he is a right back who, I mean, his stat lines, it's like he'd only scored 7 goals in his previous 252 games for Palace. And he knocked in he knocked in a left foot, right foot header.
Was this the one on the, was it on the FA website or ITV4? It was on ITV4.
Yeah.
And yeah, what a bad night.
Yeah. So yes, you've taken the easy one. That's fine. I'm glad you did. Jafo, you are up next.
I'll go for a Wolves player. I'll go for Wayne Hennessy.
Wayne Hennessy did start in goal that day. Hanneman was on the bench. Back to you, Stu.
Jeffrey.
He did. Joffrey Mugandjibi started the game. One of his few starts for Wolves.
I'll go the Octopus. Christoph Berra. Christoph Berra. How get my fucking words out? Berra.
Yes, Christoph Berra.
Yeah.
Started for Wolves.
Carl Henry.
Carl Henry started and scored for Wolves' goal that day in the 90th minute.
Oh, do I risk it? Because I'm doing well. Do I risk it and go for a Palace player?
Ooh.
Oh, go on. I'll go Sean Derry.
Sean Derry, yes. He started, was captain on the day, and I believe was booked.
Like he should.
Back to the studio.
Um,
Studio.
What? That should be on the door.
Why have we never talked about that before?
Wardy.
Stephen Ward did not feature.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
No, he was not on the bench as well. I don't know if he was out injured. But no. So Jafo.
For an unlikely win.
You've come for the win here. If you get it wrong, we lap back round.
Michael Mancian.
Michael Mancian.
Yeah, I think he played in
Started.
midfield. Yeah,
He's done it. He's only got to do it.
it's the redemption arc.
Do you want to see? This is your Rocky moment. Live it. Drink it in. Drink it in, Jafo. Let's see the lineups. So for Wolves, Hennessy in goal. Then a back four of Stearman, Craddock, Barrett, and Zubar, which spells kind of recipes for disaster for me. Midfield of Mancian, Foley, Carl Henry, Nenad Miliash, and Majanji Bia. And Sam Vokes up from by himself. I mean, even back then, I think, for warning signs on the ball. A couple of shout out names for the players on the bench, though. So Marcus Hanneman, Andrew Sermon, David Jones, Greg Halford, Segundo Castillo, Ebanks Blake, Iniwalumo, and Jones, Ebanks, and Iwalumo came on. I found the Palace lineup far more interesting. I'm going to be brutally honest, because I could recognise most of them. Because, of course, I had Julian Speroni, Nathaniel Klein, Clint Hill. I couldn't remember Lawrence. Stu? Could you?
It might be Jamie Lawrence, really.
That one I struggled with. Danny Butterfield, of course. Davis in the middle of the park, alongside Sean Derry, Darren Ambrose, Neil Dans, Carl. Again, not sure. And then Alan Lee as well. Had a young Sean Scannell on the bench as well, which I think was a lovely throwback name as well. But yeah, bonkers game. I mean, in fact, if it wasn't classic Wolves to have a right back score a hat trick against you, then it would be definitely classic Wolves to lose to a team with the worst form in Europe after winning 2 games on the bounce. Which is more classic Wolves for you?
I mean, the fact that Palace, it took us 5 hours to get there that night, then to watch that, it's almost on a par with the Spurs fans today. But today, I mean, yesterday was the fact that we've only won there once ever. We'd never scored in the Premier League either before yesterday, let alone won the game in the Premier League. It was kind of nailed on that it was going to happen, really. We got lured in by hope, which is always a bad idea. Which is why you kind of in a normal Wolves world, that going to Brighton and losing is inevitable, but because they're playing well, is the curse broken? Will something else happen? Who knows?
It's going to be magical. But we will find out on Tuesday, and we'll be back to talk about it on Wednesday as well. Big shout out to everyone who's tuned in live, to everyone who's watched this back on YouTube, and everyone who's listening to it on podcasts as well. Your support is, of course, greatly appreciated. We're really proud that we've got to the 2,000 subscriber mark. We are always growing, always trying to improve, always putting out fresh new content as well. So if you've not already subscribed, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe button, please, and thank you. And make sure you keep up to date with all things Wolves Fancast at Wolves Fancast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And again, as mentioned at the top of the show, we'll finish it off as well. Make sure you check out some of the stuff we're putting out in terms of our charity football match happening in a couple of months' time. Well, I was going to say a couple of months, in about 7 weeks' time as well. So yeah, and again, if you're interested in donating, I'll make sure the link's in the description ASAP for you as well. Until next time, though, it's goodbye from Jafo.
Goodbye and hello to my win.
And it's goodbye from Stu St. George.
Yeah, let's just hope that Wolfie gets cleared. Clear his name. It was a mistake, because we don't want the hassle to be. Goodbye, everyone.
We really don't. And it's goodbye from me. We'll see you next time.